Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I have with me today Hemant Mehta, the friendly atheist. Thank you for coming, Hemant.
For sure.
Hem-
Thank you.
this stream came about because last week I saw an article in the Huffington Post saying that in the Ohio school system that Prager U videos were being offered as extra credit by a history teacher in a history class. And, if this was a private school or religious school, that'd be one thing, but it wasn't. This was a public school. And so the first person I thought of was Hemant. And I said, Hemant, we got to talk about this. So Hemant, first I'll let you introduce yourself, talk
Sure.
a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump in the topic.
Sure. You can find my writing at friendlyatheist.com or just search YouTube for Friendly Atheist and you'll find my videos. But yeah, that story about the Prager U thing, basically, there's two things going on here. One is from the side of Prager U, which is a conservative media outlet that wants to pretend it's like academic, but offering like an alternative take on history when it's really just right-wing propaganda. But again, when they call it Prager U, it makes it sound like educational. It's not. That's just what Dennis Prager, he just put a U after his name. It's still stupid. And also the content is just factually untrue. It's not just bad opinions. It's like factually inaccurate and the opinions don't actually stand up to scrutiny. But again, that's their right. That's their like YouTube channel. They can do whatever they want in terms of promoting bad ideas. It's what they do. And anyone who's actually looked into it and actually like reported on it instead of just gone down a YouTube rabbit hole kind of understands where they get things wrong, why they get it wrong, what they're trying to do, things like that. Like they use language like, they have classical liberals who think trans people don't exist and stuff like that. Now, here's the issue. At that particular school, and it wasn't just one place, this is kind of the goal here. The Prager U people are basically offering themselves up as, further exploration of concepts you might learn in a history class or a government class. And the problem with that is you're not getting just additional material, you're getting bad information. And that's the last thing we want students to take up. But if people aren't familiar with them, then you might be mistaken into thinking this is like some legitimate academic resource that kids could use. Like, so the best case situation here is that even the teacher in that particular case you just mentioned didn't really know what this was. This isn't some like conservative activist that's trying to indoctrinate students. They said, I want to help my students. I want to give them more information that they can use to educate themselves. Oh, this looks very informative. Let me use that as a possible suggestion. Let me promote it to my students as an example of further information, except not realizing it's coming from a right-wing propaganda site. And that's the issue. Like, I don't think the administrators of that school, if I have that story correct, I don't think the administrators understood it either. It was a parent who saw that on the list and said, what the heck are you doing here? And tried telling them, like, do you know where this is coming from? I'll give you an example. This is a post I'm working on probably for tomorrow. It's an entire propaganda outlet basically saying why the Electoral College, which benefits Republicans right now, is a really good idea and way better than the popular vote. It's like made to look like we're just educating you on what it is. It's like a Schoolhouse Rock video. Those are great, right? Except it's not. It's propaganda. And unless you understand who's creating it and where it's coming from, you could be legit mistaken into thinking it's okay. I mean, we're talking about trying to fool the sort of people who are dumb enough to think, oh, yes, Fox News, that's like MSNBC. They're just two sides of the same coin. Like, no, they're not. One has some center-left opinion commentators who base their reports on facts but have their opinions that skew more progressive. And the other makes things up and isn't a legitimate news outlet. Like, you're insane if you think Fox News is a legit media outlet. But again, for a lot of people who don't pay attention to it, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not calling those people dumb. I'm not calling them names. I have the luxury of doing this all the time. This is what I write about. This is what I study. And a lot of people don't have that luxury. So I'm not blaming them. I'm saying for the people who are in positions like mine, where we ought to know better, it is our responsibility to educate other people on what the facts are and what's actually going on. And in the case of Prager U, they know that a lot of these teachers are doing everything they can. They're already stretched thin. They have other things to worry about. So they're coming in saying, don't worry, we did all the work for you. Just show your kids this and everything will be okay. It's kind of like Christian sex educators that come from faith-based places that go into public schools saying, you need someone to teach this because it's not the thing you all specialize in, which is true. And they're like, we studied this stuff. We know this stuff, and we will educate your kids about sex education, just whether it's hire us or allow us to come in once a week to do it. And then they preach this abstinence, fake information. And it's like, every now and then that stuff gets exposed. And it's like, how the heck did the school allow these people to come in? And it's honestly, the best case answer here is that they just didn't know any better and they didn't do their research because they assumed that these people were trustworthy. And the thing I'm trying to tell people is like, don't know. There are Christian groups that lie to you so they can get into public schools. There are right-wing media outlets that will lie to you in order to get into public schools. It's what they do. So that's the thing about that Huffington Post story where they kind of said Prager U is kind of on a mission to do this at as many schools as possible. And it's kind of up to the teachers and administrators to know better than to allow them in. Like, again, no, this isn't a censorship thing. Kids are free to go down a rabbit hole and get brainwashed if they want to, and no one's shutting down the channel on YouTube. This is saying, what should we teach kids in a public school? It should be accurate information, not the stuff you get from right-wing commentators.
One of the things that I was really left wondering after reading the article was they said that there were some questions that were supposed to lead to critical thinking. And I was thinking, if they gave them this and an opposing video and asked questions like, what's wrong with these? What statements in here are false? How do you recognize? Then it actually could be a good exercise.
Maybe. I have my doubts about that too. And here's why. I'll give you an example of this. Back when, it was probably 15 years ago at this point, when we were having debates about whether we should teach intelligent design in public schools, I will tell you, I thought that would be a legitimate idea. Like, why not say, here's what the intelligent design people say, here's what real scientists have to say about it. And don't we want kids educated on what's like going on so they can be part of the debate, so they can understand what people are talking about? And here's the argument against that. Why are we allowing one group's propaganda to seep in and use that as the counterpoint instead of just saying, look, here are the facts. This is what's going on. This is what the professionals, the experts who study this day in and day out have to say. And also there are people who are trying to discredit them that don't do a good job of it, but they are trying to do that. Like, that's all you need to say. Not to say, here's what this particular group has to say or this ideology has to say, because it's wrong. Don't give them light. Like, same thing. Like, don't show the kids Prager U propaganda, because what you're suggesting right there is let's give them the alternative point of view, which is the facts. Like, let's not pretend these are two equal but opposite points of view. There's truth and there's the stuff they're saying. And to hold them up as, this is what the other side has to say and it's up to you to figure it out. It's like, no. That's a bad educator right there. No, you teach the kids the truth. And yes, there is propaganda for everything out there that wants to steer them away from that. So let's not bring in bad information and suggest there's any legitimacy to it, even if the goal is to say, let's knock it down. No. Let them deal with that later. You teach them the facts, you educate them on the facts, and then let them have at it afterwards.
Do you think part of the problem might be that schools fail to give teachers the material that they need?
Sometimes. I mean, again, I've worked at a public school for several years, and I was at a pretty good school with a lot of resources, maybe not enough even, but like I had plenty of resources, I always felt. And again, there's the difference between we can afford good textbooks. We have a system down. And then here's where the leeway is for individual teachers versus most schools, most public schools that don't have a lot of resources, where the individual teachers are scrambling to create a lot of this stuff from scratch because they don't have they don't have help from older teachers who might have taught this class already. Like, a lot of teachers are scrambling to create this stuff starting from nothing. And I'm sorry, what was your question again? Like, is it a lack of resources?
Yeah. Do you think lack of resources is part of the issue?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll give teachers the benefit of the doubt here. Assuming they want to do a good job and teach their kids what's best, you're trying to pull stuff in from all over the place. Sometimes the states don't help you. They have very loose guidance on what you have to do. And then the fill in the blank part is so wide open that you get a huge variety of what kids learn in school, depending on what school it is, what the teacher is, things like that. I mean, you would hope it's more uniform. It's really not. It's a crapshoot depending on what type of school you go to. But again, assuming the teachers want to do well, yeah, a lot of them are scrambling for stuff. And there are good resources out there, but there's no one single clearinghouse for it. So they're trying to pull from all sorts of places, trying to give their kids the best possible education. And what are some of these groups trying to do? They're trying to seep into that pipeline saying you should also teach them this as an alternative or as part of your curriculum, which is, I think, what Prager U was trying to do. And there's a lot of educated people trying to sound the alarms like, this is not what you should be teaching kids. This is bad information. It is ahistorical. It misses a lot of context here. And so that's the concern.
Okay. One other thing I was thinking of as I was looking at it was, the whole religious aspect as well. Even though Prager U, I was going over their video, and most of what they've put out in the last year appears to be pretty religion neutral on the surface.
Yes.
But I even looked at what they list as what they believe in, which is pretty general. They don't say much.
Right.
But when you go down and watch the actual videos and look at some of their older stuff, the religious aspect seeps in as well.
Yeah, they won't say you should all believe in God or that Christianity is correct. What they will do is spread the lie that, we live in a Christian nation, and here's what that means. And it's right-wing stuff, but it's seeped into this idea that Christianity is good, that it's present at the foundation of our country, and therefore, which isn't true, and that should then be the basis on which we build our society, which is another horrible idea. Like, that's how it seeps in. You're right. It's not a quote-unquote Christian source of information, but it's full of people who are like, we are a culturally, wink-wink, Christian country, and here's what that means in terms of who gets rights and who doesn't.
Do you think that the current administration has made this kind of thing easier?
You mean for like Prager U to seep in?
Yes.
It's very tempting to say, of course they have, but honestly, I think it's that they haven't done anything. Like, they haven't told schools this is what you need to be doing in order to receive federal funding. They're just like, we don't care about you. You're on your own. The money we're giving is going to private schools, charter schools, other places. Like, they're just not doing anything. I mean, believe me, there was plenty of criticism when Democrats were in office, and they said, if you want extra federal money, which y'all do, you need to set your standards higher and in a way that's more modern. This is what's known as like that Common Core controversy thing, where it's just like, there are educators now. I'll give you an example because I taught math. When it comes to teaching math, how do we teach it? There is an old way of doing it. It's the way I learned how to do it in school, which is really heavily based on like, here's how you add. This is the algorithm. And if you do it this way, you'll get the right answer, which is true. But unless you're like a quote unquote math person, you don't necessarily have to understand what's going on. You just have to do the thing, but it doesn't actually help you cope with, like, no one in your real life will say, I need you to multiply two random numbers.
Yeah.
but the Common Core idea was there's a better way of teaching all this stuff, which actually helps students understand what's going on. It takes a little longer, especially at first, but once they figure out how to actually do it the right way, it actually helps them understand math later on much more quickly. It's so much better. It's a way all the math people you knew in your life, the ones who just figured it out really quick, it's the way they do it because they figured it out, even if they weren't taught it that way. But again, and what the government said is, look, if you adjust the statewide curriculum to say, yeah, this is the standard we're now holding you to, then you are eligible for more money. Now, there's plenty of criticism on a lot of that stuff in terms of how the money's given out, the bribery, in a sense, to do it this way or else. But the Trump administration is just like, no one's getting anything because we're trying to help private schools, charter schools, schools that aren't already the public schools, which is like the public schools are what the government should be helping. So like, I don't know that they've made it easier for the stuff to seep in, but there's certainly no oversight that's preventing it right now.
One of the things that I found disturbing was the way the school handled the entire situation, which was, the student went to her mother and the mother went to the administration, and the administration offered to move her to a different class.
Right, which doesn't solve, it solves the issue for that kid, but it doesn't solve the problem we're trying to solve.
Right. Yeah. Now they did eventually eliminate the Prager U videos from the curriculum entirely.
Right. But you could see, like, when they're telling the parent, like, we can move your kid to a different class, what they're saying is, we don't understand what you're complaining about. Oh, you don't like this resource that a teacher was offering? Then why don't we move you to another class? Like, let's assume they legit thought that was the way to fix the problem. But the parents, like, the problem isn't my kid in this class. It's not the teacher. It's that you're suggesting this is a good resource. It's not. You shouldn't allow this to be in the classroom as if it's a form of extra credit or an additional resource. It's not. Stop pretending it is. And like, again, what I saw from that part of the article is just like, they don't get it. They need it to be explained to them because they genuinely don't understand what the problem is. And I'm not mad at them for not understanding it. I don't expect everyone to understand it. But when you're confronted with it, now it's your obligation to understand it so you could solve the problem. And it took them a while.
Yeah. But at least they did finally get it.
Eventually, for that one. But now the concern is, it doesn't matter what one school does. What happens when they flood many public schools with this? Yes, one school may fix the problem. How many of the rest of them won't? And that's scary to think about.
Now, you mentioned that it wasn't just one school, and the article I looked at only talked about one school. Have you seen this in other places?
Personally, no, I haven't. I think the article suggested this is what Prager U is trying to do. That's why they're creating these resources, because they want schools to use them. I mean, they wouldn't be doing it if it was for just a YouTube audience or just one school or anything like that. So again, we don't know how widespread this sort of thing is, but it's kind of up to parents. It's up to students who understand what the issue is and can call it out and say, okay, if you don't understand why this is bad, I do, and I want to put a stop to it. I mean, this has long been like for church-state separation issues. Like, what about a coach praying with students? A lot of them do it, but unless someone sees it happening or is part of a team where it's happening and understands that's not what you're supposed to do, and has the understanding of saying, I need to talk to a group about this, like, that's a lot of things that have to happen before even a group like Freedom from Religion Foundation can get involved. I remember reading a story. There was, this may be a tangent. There was the case not before the Obergefell ruling, but the case from like a decade ago that overturned like sodomy laws that still existed, that said we can arrest you if you are caught, two men caught together. Supreme Court had to overrule that because it wasn't allowed. But the reason that even became a lawsuit that worked its way up to the Supreme Court is because one of the guys who was caught and punished told a friend of his what had happened. And the friend of his was like, oh my God, like, that's the sort of thing that no one ever gets arrested for, even though the law is in the books. And unless we have a test case, you can't file a lawsuit over it because you don't have legal standing, but you got punished. You have legal standing. I know which lawyer to talk to about this. And when the lawyers heard it, they're like, oh my God, this is the case we've been looking for because it's insane anyone got punished. That's what led to the sodomy laws getting overturned. But like, if that the bartender in this case hadn't heard the story and hadn't known who to talk to, that law would still be in the books, maybe. So like, it's an issue of, does the student or the parent, in the case of the Prager U thing, understand like, oh, this is the curriculum? Oh no, we need to first ask the school to fix this and then try to raise a ruckus about it in case it's not just us.
So it sounds like the best thing that we can really do is just keep talking about it, because the more parents that see that this is something their kids might be bringing home, the more we'll be looking through what their kids are bringing home from school to see, is my kid being fed this kind of thing at school?
I will say yes, absolutely, to parents being on the lookout. Like, my parents didn't know what I was learning in high school. Like, they wouldn't have understood if something was like too right-leaning or left-leaning or something like that. But I do feel like especially teenagers today are way more savvy about that stuff, and they know how to call it out. They certainly know how to take screenshots if they see something messed up, and that's a good thing. Like, so you want them to pick up on it, and part of that is talking about it and educating people about what they may see.
We have a comment in the chat here from Brainbug. FRF told me that they could only pursue if there is documentation of the teacher forcing their religious beliefs on students. This isn't really a case of religious beliefs as much as it is, right-wing beliefs.
Right. I don't know what law was violated in the Prager U case. The issue wasn't that they were breaking the law by offering that as a resource. It's just bad education. So that was the issue in that particular issue. Now, I don't know what Brainbug's situation was, but yeah, FFRF may say, look, this is an issue, but they have a protocol. And first of all, I'm not a lawyer and I don't work for them, but I'm telling you, they have a protocol that they follow. And they say, like, if someone says there's a problem at my kid's school or my school or something, it's like, well, tell us what happened. Tell us what you saw. Tell us what you know. If they say, like, our teacher said something about God in the classroom, well, if there's no recording and it happened one time, like, there's not much they can do about it. If there's enough story behind it, they can at least write a letter to the school and say, we heard this, we want you to fix it. But that's not a lawsuit. That's just them saying, we heard about this and can you look into it or something. But yeah, I mean, having worked with, as in communicating with FFRF, they are very, very selective. And I mean that in a good way about what they will pursue. They're not frivolous. They don't go after frivolous cases. They will only say, like, look, we can write letters, but we're only going to do it if we have a leg to stand on. We're not doing it to scare people. We don't go out looking for it. You got to come to us and say, this is what I saw. Maybe they'll try to get more documentation on that. But I always tell people who email me about it too, like, well, you should try to get more screenshots if you saw something weird on the Facebook page of the school, or like, I don't know, maybe the public school's actual Facebook page had a prayer on it for some reason. Like, I will take screenshots sometimes for them, but like, it's you need to document this stuff.
You make a really good point. When I was in the Christian faith, we were always told that, FFRF and the ACLU, that they're just sitting there waiting to pounce and take away your rights. And
that's a lie.
Yeah.
And again, like, not only are they not trying to sit around and do that, they get so many legit complaints, they honestly wouldn't even have time if they wanted to, but they don't. It's like saying, bring us the issues you have, and then they look into it. I've gotten emails where I've said, hey, I read this article, like a local article, and it sounds like a school is breaking the law, but I'm not sure. And they will look into it. Sometimes it takes a little while, but they look into it, and they sometimes write back and say, yeah, it does seem like it's messed up or a promotion of religion, but honestly, it's legal. It's unfortunate, but it is legal. There's nothing we can really do about that. They've said that to me sometimes. And it's like, yeah, what are they going to do? Write a letter saying, haha, we're going to come after you for doing this. They're not doing it just because they disagree. They're not doing it because they hate religious people. They're very much like, there's plenty of actual bad stuff going on. We'll focus on that. And if we don't have something that we can work off of, we just won't do it. And sometimes they've written and they said, look, everything you're saying is legit awful and it does sound like a problem. But right now we don't have enough to send a letter. We don't have enough to file a lawsuit. Keep your eyes open. If there's more, please write back. But I mean, that happens all the time. It does. But yeah, the idea that they're out to get little towns or that they're out to bankrupt cities, like, it's the dumbest idea. And that always comes from people who don't know what they're talking about. Because I've seen the letters. Like, not only that, let's say there is a legit complaint. Let's say a school is, I don't know, doing a nativity scene or a nativity play for the winter concert or something. Like, they don't just file a lawsuit over that. They'll write a letter saying, look, we saw this. We have pictures of it. There's a YouTube video of the concert. Please fix it. And they wait for the response. And if the response is, you're right, we shouldn't have done that, we won't do it again, then they're like, all right, then we're good.
Solved.
Yeah, they're not going to file a lawsuit unless the school's like, nope, we're still doing this. We know it's you know what I mean? And so I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure the ACLU works the same way. I'm pretty sure most of those similar groups work the same way. And again, I've seen cases where sometimes the student knows a teacher is preaching in the classroom and the kids are smart enough to say, all right, well, I'm recording this if it's legal in your state or something, because then you have the proof. And that helps. It helps when you could say, like, it's not just me saying this, even if I have friends who will vouch for me, like, nope, I got a recording. This is what the teacher is saying in the classroom. Like, then the school kind of has to act and do something about it.
We have a follow-up from Brainbug who says, yeah, the science teacher was telling them that evolution was a lie and it was her Christian duty to tell them the truth. And
obviously public school, that's illegal. But yeah, unless there's some evidence of that, as in a recording or something where the teacher said, we're not going to learn about evolution or something. Like, again, this is just be a smart student in this sense. Like, get it in writing, get it on paper, get a recording, whatever it is. If someone's breaking the law by saying something like that, we can act on it. There are groups that can act on it and put a stop to it. But if it's just like, I heard my teacher say this, I don't know, maybe there's a possibility you misunderstood what was being said. And that's an easy way to dismiss what you're saying. I don't want to do that if it's a legit complaint.
Yeah, and having raised kids myself, that I've had to go through that a couple times where the kids have come home and told me that their teacher said something outrageous. And so I always start with, my child said that you said something, and maybe they misunderstood. Right. Maybe my child misunderstood. Can I clarify this? Yeah.
There was a wonderful example of this a couple months ago. And this is on the other side where I think an atheist parent, I don't know who the parent was, but an atheist parent said, my kid came home from English class and their teacher was making them read the book of Genesis in the Bible in like an AP English class or something like that, advanced placement English, college level English class. And I'm like, and my first thought is, well, that's awful. They shouldn't be doing that. You can't have that in school. And I caught, like, because the local news was like, the parent wrote an email to the teacher. The teacher said nothing. Or nothing's going on. And the principal backed her up. But they showed glimpses of the email exchange, but they didn't publish it. So I'm like screenshotting. I'm trying to like pause it and like, what are they saying? And basically, here's the bottom line. The teacher wanted the kids, they were going to read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley or Paradise Lost, John Milton, like classic works of literature. But if you want to really understand them and the references that are made in those books and the allusions the authors make, it doesn't make sense unless you kind of know the story of the Garden of Eden, which is Genesis 1 and 2, and you understand who Adam and Eve are. And again, you can assume everyone knows that, but they don't. Not everyone's Christian. And so the teacher said, look, read the books of Genesis like 1 through 3, which gets into the creation and the Eden stuff. And I need you to do that so you can understand the references we're going to be talking about. Because they do reference, like, who was it? Maybe there's Frankenstein references Prometheus and fire and creation, and I forgot the details there. But basically, it was like, yeah, that's a totally legit thing to do, to read the Bible, to get a common understanding of what Christians already know, because those authors of classic works of literature are making these references to it, and you can't understand the literature unless you understand the Bible. That's not proselytizing. That's kind of saying you need to know the myth so we could discuss how other cultures and other people have expanded upon it, and talked about it. Like, so when I read that, I'm like, oh, there's a totally legit reason for this, and the teacher is doing it right. Teacher's making it clear, all that. And I think the parent even said, you should have them read Darwin, because as for the Frankenstein book, you should have them read Darwin. And the teacher wrote back something like, Darwin wasn't born until after Frankenstein came out. Like, and also,
there's no references there. Yeah, they would. Yeah, it wouldn't help with the reference
in
at all.
In that case, the teacher was spot on with everything, and the parent was an idiot. I still don't know who the parent was.
Well, you had told me beforehand that you had a very limited time frame, and so I do want to respect that. And so I thank you so much for coming today. It has been a pleasure to have you, and it's really been a good experience to be able to hear your perspective on this topic.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the questions. Thank you to you. Thank you for everyone for listening in and asking questions, and we'll do it again soon. Go vote, all of you, now.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Live your life. Bye.
See ya.